It's going to be a great program. I want you to share all this on all your social media outlets, even those that like to censor us. Go ahead and share it there. It's okay. We'll be all right. You can always find the program at rumble.com/flashpoint or at govictory.com/flashpoint. If you ever wonder where we are and that's how you watch, you can find us there. And of course, we're on all the broadcast outlets around the country. Thank you for watching. You know, I don't talk about this much, but we usually have a lot of countries watch us every night that we're on during the week. So thank you, everybody that's watching, see what happens here in America. All right. All right, let's get started. I'm pleased to welcome my first guest this evening, Freedom Caucus member and Congressman from the great state of Virginia, Representative Bob Good. Congressman, welcome to Flashpoint. Glad you're here tonight.
Great to be with you, Gene. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let me show you this first tweet because I want to get right into some questions that Americans are having. You wrote this: America's security must be our top priority. We cannot continue to borrow and spend money we don't have for wars overseas while failing to protect Americans from the Biden border invasion here at home. First off, thank you for calling it what it is. It is an invasion at our border. But let's deal with the Mike Johnson question right off the top. A lot of Americans are feeling a bit concerned about Mike Johnson. What do you think is going on there? Why did he go with some of these decisions?
Well, we have failed the American people in terms of using the budget or appropriations process to leverage spending reductions and policy changes. When the former speaker was removed at the end or the 1st of October, and then the new speaker was installed, Mike Johnson admittedly inherited a very difficult situation because the previous speaker had not done his job. There's a reason why we needed a new speaker. And the spending bills that were supposed to have been passed by the end of September, we'd only passed 4 of those out of the House even, and none of those through the Senate yet. In addition, he had a very narrow majority, which has since gotten more narrow. However, we have not used the leverage we have with having a House majority to pass Republican priorities out of the House and then have a fight with the Senate to try to get at least half of our priorities. Instead, what we've done is joined with the Senate, passed out of the House what the Senate wanted and what the president would sign so that we'd have a seamless transition into no government shutdown, no risk or discomfort of a partial government shutdown. And so the American people have lost in that equation.
Well, thank you for speaking plainly, because I think that's what concerns all of Americans that are sitting at home. The polls show it. They're concerned about our economy. They're concerned about our borders, and they're concerned about people in D.C. that are not really representing their people and their districts back home. It's frustrating. Are we ever going to see, we don't want to go through the drama of another speaker again, but are we going to see something happen here where we can get on the same page in the House and get things through that need to happen?
Well, there is a frustration, admittedly. Some Republicans haven't demonstrated they really do want to cut spending. They do really want to limit government, or they want to do it, but they're just not willing to take risk to do it or to suffer maybe consequence to fight for what we believe in. But at some point, Gene, the border invasion has to become more than a talking point or a campaign slogan or something that we just address in speeches and interviews and things like that. We should have used the spending process to force the Senate to secure the border, and the White House as well. We also can't just keep talking about the debt and the deficit and the consequence to our current inflation situation, our rising interest rates. American people are suffering, not to mention what will be a worse future for our children and our grandchildren. We've got to show the resolve to do that. You're not going to get everything you want when you have one House of two within one branch of government, but you ought to get half of what you want. So far, we haven't gotten really anything that we wanted as Republicans in the House.
Let me show. Well, obviously, yeah, agreed. Obviously, in 22, Biden claimed he had a plan to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve after draining it to its lowest level in 4 decades. Today, they canceled that plan because oil's too expensive. Here it is in his own words from 2022, Joe Biden.
I'm announcing a plan to refill the Strategic Petroleum Oil Reserve in the years ahead at a profit for taxpayers. The United States government is going to purchase oil to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Okay. I'm going to skip over saying Strategic Petroleum Reserve. But, Congressman, why are we seeing this is so obvious to Americans sitting at home. And I guess that's my frustration that you're hearing, is that people at home are watching this going, why are they keep lying and doing exactly what they say they're not going to do? It's exactly what they do as well.
Well, the president has kept his word on some things. He said he was going to end drilling. He was going to try to end fossil fuels. He was going to try to force us into unreliable, unaffordable energy, that he was going to look at everything through a climate lens. And the American people are suffering as a result. Utility prices are higher, gas prices are higher. We've got the president trying to tell us what kind of an appliance we can have, what kind of a car we can drive. And then when he was, I guess, surprised that gas prices went up when we reduced U.S. gas production, U.S. oil production, then he tried for political reasons to diminish the strategic petroleum reserves. He thinks it's a strategic political reserve, I guess. Right. And really that was, I think that was an impeachable offense to do that for political reasons and compromise our economic and national security to do that. But this is a president who doesn't think we need fossil fuels, who doesn't think we need petroleum, and he doesn't care about what the consequences are to the American people. He's kept his promises to open the border. He's kept his promises to focus on the climate war. He's kept his promises to make it harder to produce energy in this country, and he's done those things.
Yeah, he's definitely done those things. Let me show you this, Newt Gingrich, what he had to say about all of this. Watch.
This administration desperately sold, at a time people told them not to, the oil out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, trying to keep the price down for political reasons. Now they can't refill it because the price is going back up, and it doesn't fit their values. They don't care if we run out of oil. What they care about is some fantasy world in which you and I will somehow get by on their theoretical inventions of technologies that don't work.
Well, and I assume he's talking about technologies that don't work. Everybody go buy an electric vehicle. Forget about making the batteries. Forget about not enough charging stations. Forget about what happens when those batteries have to be disposed of. Is it really... or is this, Congressman, really just kicking the can down the road to the next group in the next 4 years?
Well, this wind and solar is never going to work. It's never going to replace fossil fuels. It's never going to replace petroleum. And so Newt Gingrich was right with what he said. But we shouldn't, as a people, allow our government to infringe on our freedoms and tell us that we have to buy an electric vehicle that the American people don't want. You know, they're impractical, they're expensive, they're subsidized by the government right now, and we shouldn't settle for or allow our government to tell us that, hey, we can only have 30% of our vehicles be gas-powered vehicles, you know, by 2030, something like that. What's that going to do to the price of gas-powered vehicles? We already can't afford electric vehicles. Almost everyone who owns an electric vehicle, it's a wealthy person, and it's their second or third vehicle. They can't rely on it for travel, of course, but really this is about freedom. This is really about the proper role of government. This is really about the Democrat Party's allegiance to their gospel of climate extremism, environmental extremism, and anti-energy. And they don't care about our national security. They don't care about our economic security. And so the American people and our elected officials on the Republican side need to do everything we can to stand up to this and stop it.
Yeah, you're right. We do need to stand up. And that's why the FlashPoint Army is watching tonight, because we need to know what to do to stop it. All right, so listen to this. D.C. Drain Rogan O'Hanley posts this. Is the Biden regime weaponizing Social Security Administration to hand out fake temporary Social Security numbers to illegals and automatically register them to vote in key swing states? Now, this is a story, as we've touched on this before, but listen, there's over 2 million in Texas, Arizona, and Pennsylvania alone in just the past 3 months. There needs to be a national injunction, or all of these voter registrations need to be removed. They're illegal aliens, and red state attorney generals need to be all over this. Are you seeing that the attorney generals in the red states are on this? Because we're not hearing from a whole lot of them.
Well, in some cases they are, and really election integrity is a 50-state solution. Unfortunately, the founders gave authority for elections in the Constitution to the states. We don't want Washington, under the previous government, Democrat control of all forms of government. We had Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden controlling the country. You wouldn't want them to be able to change election law for every state. They tried to do it. Thankfully, they couldn't get it through the Senate. But I'm confident that illegals are voting around the country. When you cannot require proof of citizenship based on a law from 30 years ago when Clinton was in in office, when you can't require proof of citizenship, when you can't require voter ID, when you have unsolicited mail balloting, third-party ballot harvesting, drop boxes at places other than polling places, when you are doing automatic, even same-day voter registration, you know these people are not being vetted. So this is the reason why you've got the open borders. This is the reason why you've got the relaxed voting standards. The Democrat Party wants to cheat elections, and I'm confident they're doing it. And we've got so much work to do to be diligent to combat it. The one thing the American people can do is overwhelm them at the polls. Studies show that red state areas don't vote as high proportionally as blue state areas do. It's estimated that half the people in evangelical conservative churches across the country are not voting. That we've got to fix that. We've got to change that. Everybody's vote counts. We need there's more people who believe right in this country than those who do not, I think, and who want the right things for the future of our country. They just got to stand up and be counted.
Yeah, amen. You're preaching our language right there. And the reality is, I think a lot of folks in red states that have gone red don't realize how close it really is to purple or blue. I know even here in Texas with our Tarrant County, there's an all-out assault on it. And if Tarrant County goes, there's a lot that will follow along that line. So, but let me show you this one thing. I know you got to go. I want to show you this last tweet. 227,000 plus people in Texas registered to vote without a photo ID during the week of March 16th. Now, they list some states there. Rhode Island had 170, none in South Carolina, none in Tennessee. Utah had 197, 396 in Washington. West Virginia had 0. Virginia had 0. Yet, somehow in Texas, Congressman, we had over 227,000 people register to vote. What does that say to you with that statistic?
Well, Texas is the front line of the fight. Obviously, they're taking the brunt of the border invasion, as the largest part of the southern border is Texas. That's why Texas is trying so hard to fight it. And the Biden administration is prohibiting Texas from securing their own border and defending their citizens. The Democrats know if they take Texas, Republicans aren't going to win another presidential election for decades to come, and they're willing to do it by any means necessary. So we've got Texas state legislature controlled by Republicans. We've got a Republican attorney general, governor, lieutenant governor, and so forth. We've got full control of government there. Texas needs to do everything they can to ensure their own election integrity, but they're fighting Democrats who are willing to do anything they can to steal an election, including getting illegals to vote, obviously.
So true. All right. So, Congressman, I'm going to let you go, but let me get to the last question in here. You've got a lot of people across America watching tonight that have a belief in God. They want to see conservative values returned to the White House, returned to D.C. Other than voting, what should they be doing?
Well, we've got to be invested in elections. The Democrat Party always has more money. They always outspend us. And really, that shouldn't be. I think part of it is because to Democrats, government's their God, politics is their religion. That's where they pour their resources, while Republicans tend to give to faith-based groups, their church, obviously, and Christian charities and things like that. But we've got to provide the resources. We can't have our in these contested races, we can't have our candidates overwhelmingly outspent by Democrats. So we need to do the hard work of knocking the doors, putting up the signs, making the phone calls, volunteering at your local GOP committee. But also, we've got to give the resources as well, support candidates who are true, courageous, conservative warriors, because that's how we're going to change the country.
Excellent advice. Thank you, sir. Congressman Bob Good, how can people stay in touch with you and see what you're doing?
Follow me at Rep Bob Good on social media, at Rep Bob Good, good.house.gov for my official work in Congress, and bobgoodforcongress.com on the campaign side.
Awesome, sir. Thank you so much for coming on FlashPoint.
Great to be with you. Take care.
All right. Let me bring in some other gentlemen that decided to come in tonight. Welcome to Rick Green and John Graves. All right, guys, I know you heard the last part of Congressman Good's evaluation of what's really going on. What do you think? I'll start with you, Rick. With all of this going on, we're disappointed with Mike Johnson. I'm just going to say it. I'm disappointed. Yeah. I thought we would see, pulling things a better direction, but it seems like here we are again, dealing with the same thing. Yeah. Do you see it different, or what's going on here?
No, man, I'm with you, brother. I feel it too, and I get it. Speaker Johnson's up, this little bitty majority, if you can even call it that. He's got an impossible task. There's no doubt about it. But it just seems like, and again, I'm not inside the room, right? So it's really hard if you're not in the room to know. But it sure seems to me like this is one of those moments in time where you have to throw down the gauntlet and say, you know, we're just absolutely standing our ground, and we're going to leave it up to the voters to decide. And I know all their consultants are telling them you can't do a shutdown; it'll cost you the majority in the election. Blah blah blah. I'm a Sam Houston guy, man. You do what's right, and you risk the consequences. But you know, everybody got to see right there with Congressman Good. There's a lot of good ones there, pun intended. But there's a lot of good ones in Congress that people just don't know. You know, Mary Miller and so many others that are fighting the good fight. Chip Roy, that most people never hear from or know about. There are some really good people there, and what he just said. Of course, John, I don't want to steal his thunder, but John's been saying this, you know, all year long. We've got to do the hard work. We can't take anything for granted. We've got to be boots on the ground. We've got to be doing the door knocking, doing the calls, doing the texting, dragging people to the polls. All of that hard work that it takes, not taking anything for granted. This is it, man. This is the year. Eric Metaxas thinks we only have this year. If we don't do it this year, we're going to lose the country. I'm not sure. I think that we got a couple of more years after that if we don't get everything we want. But you know, Metaxas has got his finger on the pulse as well. So anyway, I just want to say thank you to Congressman Good for kind of being the finger in the dike, along with that handful of really good patriot warriors there in Congress.
That was a really good comment, Rick. Okay, John. John, I want to get the same question, get your take on. I know you heard some of what Congressman Good said about what's going on. And your thoughts on Mike Johnson?
Yeah. I agree with Rick, but I remember actually I was having deja vu when you and I talked about this when the whole, prior speaker was going through, I think, 13 elections to figure out who it was. And we were talking about, and my opinion at the time was whoever it is, they're stepping into a mess. So I 100% agree with what Congressman Good said there. It's like, that's not a good mess. That's a big, bad mess. And it went from a 4-seat majority to a 3 to a 2. I think it's down to 1. People are dropping like flies, getting kicked out or quitting or retiring early and just leaving. There's almost nothing that can be done. But I want to touch on something positive. So what Rick just said, he rattled off the Chip Roys and the Good. He said Miller Meeks. Remember Miller Meeks. Government belongs to those who show up. And what I loved about what Good said is that we got to show up and vote. We got to overwhelm them because half of evangelicals aren't voting and half of hunters and fishers aren't voting. And Miller Meeks, if you'll remember, 2 cycles ago, it was the closest election in the country. Congressional District 2 in Iowa, almost 400,000 votes. She won by 6 votes, Gene. And so I understand these are tiny margins, but we can win by tiny margins. Luke 18, the persistent widow, is literally what the Holy Spirit keeps showing me over and over and over for these next 7 months. Even if there's unjust judges, we're still supposed to persist and speak. She didn't just pray. She spoke to that judge.
All right. So you just said something right there that's concerning to me. You said only half of hunters and fishermen vote?
Yeah. Yes.
Really?
Yes. I'm working on a project right now. Yes, it's pretty crazy because a lot of those guys want to be left alone. They're 40, 60, depending on how you look at it on the different issues. But they literally, the first week in November, they want to be in a deer stand, not at the polls. And so we're doing a lot of work with them because 80%, I'm doing a project with people who listen to country music. 80% of them are God-fearing, go to church kind of people, but half of them don't vote. And so there's not just the church pews and the people who sit in churches that don't vote. There's a lot of other people that are aligned with us. They may not be there every single weekend, but half of them aren't voting. And so we can win if government belongs to those who show up. We have to get our friends to show up. It's not just, hold your nose and vote or just hope it's voting, but it seems impossible. We have faith, Gene, not just sight. It looks discouraging. It looks hopeless. Think about that unjust widow. Her judge didn't fear God and didn't respect people.
That's right.
She didn't quit. Why did Jesus tell us that story? To teach us to pray and persist and never give up. And so that's what our audience needs to do. It's like, look, I don't care if we're getting fed to lions. We don't quit. No. We give it everything we got. We bring everybody we can.
But if you're not there, you're in your deer stand, which I can appreciate. Hey, next year you may not have a gun in your deer stand.
That's right.
That's right.
So think about that.
Yep.
And I'm talking to my people. So come on.
Let me give you another real world example, Gene. In Oregon, they're this close to criminalizing hunting, fishing, and most ranching. You won't be able to hunt to survive, fish to survive. Oregon's about to pass this to make it criminal. Because if you worship the environment, right, instead of steward it like Christians are supposed to do, then that's what happens. Florida's got a ballot initiative to make it constitutional. But a lot of people got to get out and understand what's going on, or the basic rights to have a gun or to feed your family are going to be taken away from you over worshiping false gods. They're worshiping the environment instead of stewarding. We're not supposed to exploit it, but we don't worship it. We steward it.
Wow.
Gene, if I on this thing about everybody showing up, I mean, we often think we have the leaders that represent the values of the nation. That's not true. They represent the values of that part of the nation that shows up to vote. And therefore, like John's saying, I mean, think about that. If half the people that share our values are not showing up, and the other side showing up in the 80 and 90% percentile, especially the hardcore leftist, they're going to dominate the election. So it's vitally important to show up and then to understand what those basic values are. Listen, I enjoy being there on opening weekend myself. It's a good reason to early vote, so you can be gone for a weekend, the deer stand, after you cast your vote. But frankly, I try to get people to go to the polls, not just to vote, but to stand there and hold signs. There's a lot of people that walk up to the polls the day of the election and still don't know who they're going to vote for especially the down ballot races. So even more than just being there for election day and voting, we need people that are willing to stand there for 3 or 4 hours, holding signs of the people that we know share biblical values in the weeks leading up to that, making the calls, making your own list of 10, 12, 15 people that you know, and literally calling them all through early voting and checking them off. And once they finally say, yes, stop harassing me, I finally went and voted. I mean, that's the hard work that we're talking about. It's not that
that's
hard,
what we need to do.
But it does take time and commitment.
Yeah, all right. We need to do that.
It's hard work, but it's worthy work.
You know, we have a lot of people at our events, guys, that come up from Oregon and say, and Washington State, say, hey, not everybody up here thinks that way. And I'm like, great, all right. Now you know what you got to do. It's good. That's really good. That was worth the whole show just for that part. You guys got to do it. All right, I got to move on. All right, so this is upsetting to the Texan in me. Look at this. A Texas National Guard soldier has been arrested during a police pursuit for attempting to smuggle illegal immigrant in a government vehicle. Here's some B-roll of that. The Kinney County Sheriff initiates a police pursuit following the apprehension of a Texas National Guard soldier deployed from McAllen to Eagle Pass under Operation Lone Star for attempting to smuggle an illegal immigrant in a government vehicle that happened on Sunday. The soldier reversed course upon nearing of a newly operational pop-up tactical border patrol checkpoint, prompting agents to take action. And then consequently, they stopped the SUV, and you see everything going on there. This is great. I mean, Rick, this is the Border Patrol. These are our guys. These are the National Guard guy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, man, this is why we have checks and balances. This is why we understand as believers the depravity of man. There's always going to be corruption, and it's our job to investigate it, find it, and be willing to stand against it. But this is why you don't want an overly powerful government or a particular law enforcement agency to have the only power, and you want those checks and balances. It's one of the reasons you guys hear me all the time talking about why I think the FBI needs to be completely dismantled, why I think the ATF needs to be gone, because they end up with this unquestioned, unchecked power. Most people experience it every time they go to the airport with TSA. You can't question anything they do, and if you do, they threaten to make you miss your flight, or I've been threatened to, I'm going to hand you over to the police department if you don't do everything I'm doing. It's just they have this unchecked power, and that's why we got to get back to checks and balances, and every citizen needs to stand up against this stuff and say no and not cower to it. So I know that's a long ways away from what you're talking about, but it all does kind of fit together. It's sort of the vigilance, we say the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We all need to be more vigilant in all of these areas. Last thing is, it's also just the degradation of society when you get God out of the equation, the moral relativism. It seeps into all of these different areas, which is why return to God is so important. And our young people going into those law enforcement agencies and into the legal realm, being attorneys, judges, all of that. We need God-fearing men and women to go into every area of the culture. We've heard Lance talk about it for years. This is just further evidence of that.
Sure is. Sure is. And it makes me wonder. Now, when I saw that story before tonight, I was thinking, something happened in there. Did he make money? Something made him say, I'm going to go against what I stand for and what I'm hired to do and do that. And that's what we get. So we've got to stay alert, stay engaged. All right. Before the break, I want to get to this. Now, this is MSNBC. It's John Gray's favorite network. And these are okay, just watch. Trump's winning. Watch.
Trump neck and neck in every swing state. According to the new numbers from the Wall Street Journal, Trump leads Biden in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, and Pennsylvania by figures that are all within the poll's margin of error. In Wisconsin, the survey shows the two candidates tied at 46% each. The poll also finds negative perceptions about the economy remain a problem for Biden. 63% of swing state voters say the U.S. economy overall is not so good or poor condition, while 36% say it's in excellent or good condition.
All right. So, I am not a fan of polls. So you've got to, always look for that. I always look for that little line at the bottom, plus or minus 15,000, or 10%, or they did a sampling in Boston, Massachusetts of 1,200 people. I mean, that's not a real poll. Yeah. All right. So, but before you comment, guys, hold up, John. I know you like MSNBC, but I got to show CBS because Jill Biden, she kind of pushed back. You may have seen this. It's making its round. What does Jill have to say about all of these states going towards Trump? Watch.
But when these polls, like the Wall Street Journal one, land in the White House and he's losing in all the battleground states.
No, he's not losing in all the battleground states. He's coming up and he's even or doing better. So, you know what? Once people start to focus in and they see their two choices, it's obvious that Joe will win this election.
All right.
Okay. Who wants to go first? John, since we talked about MSNBC, I'll let you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, since you threw me under the bus there. So CBS, I guess, is your favorite one, and because they had Jill on, is that the assumption?
Oh, I'm joking. I enjoyed that whole comment from Jill. I mean, I could play that over and over. But go ahead.
Yes, because she's delusional like her husband. Okay. So let me tell you what's more exciting. He's leading in the top 7 states by 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, all the way down. But what's more stunning that's nobody's talking about, I do a lot of polls and I watch a lot of polls. I like to take the average of all of them because you get a more accurate picture of them. But one of the things that I would point out to everybody, the only state he's not leading in is Wisconsin. Let me remind all of the viewers, in 2016, he was down 6.5%. The average of all polls in Wisconsin, he won Wisconsin. The polls in Wisconsin were 6.5 points off. 2020, fast forward, he was down 6.7. Average of all polls, he loses Wisconsin by 0.7. So Wisconsin alone is the only tied one. And the last 2 presidential elections, they've given a 6% bump to Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. And so I'm telling you, blacks are moving away from Biden to Trump. Hispanics are moving away from Biden to Trump. Young people are moving away from Biden to Trump. Soft Democrats, independents, people who were put off by Trump's mannerisms are now saying, well, this time it's not about you love or hate Trump. It's about, I don't maybe like him, but I want some of those policies back. I want a secure border. Some of the things, I was talking to a guy today, and he said, I didn't like Trump, and I didn't. But what's starting to happen is he was right and I was wrong. He was right and I was wrong about a lot of the stuff, like the border. And so I think you could see a red wave, but we have to show up. 20 million people who came to vote for Trump in 2020 did not come back in 22. That's why there was no red wave. We have a turnout problem. We've got to show up in this election cycle. All right.
Just real quick answer, John. What is your go-to poll? If you're going to look at a poll, which one should people go to?
Real Clear Politics aggregates all of them. RealClearPolitics.com. It aggregates all of them, tells you the average. I start there, and then I go to 538. And then anybody who's going to take 10 or 15 polls and average them, that's going to be more accurate than a one-off.
All right, good input. All right, Rick, you saw Jill. To me, that seemed like it's a good wife defending her husband.
Sure. Yeah.
I wasn't really convinced that, he's really doing good. Yeah. I wasn't getting.
You notice she didn't say. Yeah, she didn't say he's winning. She said he's coming up. He's coming up. So she must have seen some poll somewhere where he's doing maybe a half point better than he was. No, listen, I'm surprised the numbers aren't it is in a bigger margin than it is when you consider how good things were under Trump, how horrible they are now, how much pain people are feeling. I would think the numbers would be better. I hate to be cynical about this, but my gut says, why would all of these left-wing media sources start talking about this all of a sudden? Either they're doing it because they really do want to get Joe off the stage and get somebody else in that doesn't have his negatives, and that way you get that blank slate going against the negatives of Trump, or are they trying to suppress the Trump movement and the Trump vote and the conservative? Think about all the churches this last week. My pastor showed that proclamation from the White House, talked about how horrible and evil this was for Joe Biden to do this whole transvestite thing on Easter. They're worried about the momentum. And so if they can make it look like, okay, it looks like Trump's probably going to win, does that make our side kind of slow down, not do as much hard work, not be as motivated? And I don't know the answer to that. I just say exactly what John just said. Don't slow down. Run like you're a mile behind and you've got to catch up. Act like, man, all the odds are against us, so we've got to redouble our effort. We have to turn out that other half of the church, the other half of the hunters, the other half of everybody else if we're going to win. Don't take this for granted at all, because they're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to cheat to try to win. They're going to do everything they can. They have no morals, no concept of right and wrong. The end justifies the means with them. So we have to work doubly hard. Amen to that. All right. I still say I really don't. I'm going to double down here, Rick. I don't think he's going to make it. I think there'll be somebody else sometime in June. I'm sticking with that. You can warm up the crow just in case, but okay. I'm sticking with it, man. I guess I'm eating alongside you because I'm not seeing it. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about more gag orders, all kinds of stuff. Don't go away. We'll be right back. To the second half, I want to talk real quick about the book, FlashPoint of Revival. Yes, it was written over a year ago. However, it's never been more accurate and more apropos than right now. Listen to some of these things that will help you understand how to step into your season of acceleration, boldly take a stand for righteousness in the face of opposition, gain strength through intimacy with God, intercede for your city. What does that mean? Gain heaven's strategies for your circle of influence, and raise your voice for truth in our land. That's FlashPoint of Revival. You can get it right there at govictory.com/FP Revival. Listen, we are coming to Virginia Beach. I need to see you there. Come on, y'all. April 25, 26, right there at the Founders Inn and Spa on Indian River Road, Virginia Beach. Speakers with us include Michelle Bachman, Tony Suarez, Dutch Sheets, Gordon Robertson will be there, Lance Wallnau, Rick Green, and Luke Ball, and so much more. All of the information is right there at 2024flashpoint.live. That is a ticket event. VIP tickets are sold out. However, general admission is still available. Come be a part and see Rick squirm on. Anyway, no, he won't squirm. He'll be good. You'll enjoy. I always enjoy you, Rick. It's always fun with your Flash Talk. I was actually going to ask you, I probably should ask you this off the air, are we doing another VIP luncheon? Because that was really cool for us to get to visit with folks. I enjoyed that. I thought that was great. And by the way, can I just say, man, your production team, I love those spots where they recap kind of what happened and you hear from the people that actually attended, because they capture so well what people are going to experience if they actually come to one of these live events. Anyway, I love watching those spots. Your team does a phenomenal job on that.
I got great people.
I was wearing one.
Great people. Thank you to Larry, Jason, the whole team, everybody over there. All right, so I want to see you in Virginia Beach. If you're looking for that lunch, it's too late, unless you already ordered your VIP ticket. All right, so let's move on to, this is big news. If you're paying attention, if you don't know about this, I need you to listen. If you live in Nebraska, or if you know somebody lives in Nebraska, or you know how to spell Nebraska, okay, watch this. This is what happened. Democrat Mike McDonald switched parties. I'm going to play this whole clip because I think you need to hear it in his own words. Mike McDonald, watch.
Thank you for coming today. In 1984, I decided to register as a Democrat. I was a Christian, member of the Roman Catholic Church, and I was proud of that, and I was pro-life. 2016, I decided to run for the legislature. Christian, member of the Roman Catholic Church, pro-life, pro-union, pro-Second Amendment. Wanted to see how we could grow our state and reduce property taxes at the same time. All those things you talk door to door that you believe in. As the process we've gone through down here as senators, I've tried to stick with those principles. That has not changed for me. I asked the Democratic Party, Douglas County, to respect that I'm pro-life, that I'm a member of the Roman Catholic Church. And my beliefs are based on that. Douglas County Democrats, instead of respecting it, they decided to punish it. They said you cannot participate, you can't be a delegate, we're not going to share our party resources. I continue to vote pro-life. State Democratic Party decided to censure me. I continue to vote pro-life. This is not an easy decision. After 40 years of being a registered Democrat, having your grandfather tell you when you're 10 years old, what are we? We're Irish, we're Catholic, and we're Democrats. That kind of stuck with me. And we had many discussions after that a lot of things he tried to teach me didn't stick, but it's never easy for someone to make this kind of decision, but what makes it easier is the people standing behind me. Over the last year, regardless of my decision switching parties, they have been so supportive. Based on the things that would be said in the media or in social media, they were very supportive. We had great discussions about what the Republican Party is doing, where they're trying to go, how I potentially could fit in there. But the greatest thing about it is now I can participate again. When something's taken away from you as potentially being able to attend a meeting, they say, well, we don't want you here, and we're not going to share our resources with you. That hits you pretty hard. But it also makes you appreciate something about our democracy, the idea of being able to participate. Today I'm announcing I am now going to be a registered Republican in the state of Nebraska.
All right, so John, he comes out saying he's Republican now. That's a huge shift, obviously, after 40 years. But why all of this? Why is everybody all concerned about Nebraska with just a guy that switched parties? What does that mean?
I think there's two big reasons. One of them is if an elected official's doing this at this level, that means that's the tip of the iceberg. Underneath the iceberg, there's lots of other Democrats making that same shift. But the practical reason people are ginned up about Nebraska is the way that they elect the Electoral College for president is Trump wins the whole state, but both times he loses the Omaha area, the very, very kind of liberal blue area. They now have a filibuster-proof majority, and they have a governor and senators that want to change it to a winner-take-all state, like almost every other state except Nebraska and Maine. And that could be a one-vote margin, which doesn't sound like a lot, but the 7 states that are in play, there could be a 269 state, and that one electoral could bump Biden back up to 270. So that's why I think this is a big deal. We have been watching and working on that one district, and if they flip that before November, it is a big practical difference, Gene.
It is. It's huge. All right, I'm going to play this clip before I do. Next Tuesday night, Pastor Hank's church there in Omaha, we'll release all the details of when and what time, but Charlie Kirk and Turning Point will be there holding a meeting to help people understand and mobilization. And he's going to be covering that. I told him we would talk about it because it just came up yesterday. So that's next week. If you're there in the Omaha area or Nebraska and you can get to Lord of Hosts, you'll want to do that for next Tuesday night. Hank is still planning to be on the show that night for a little bit. But that's a big thing going on right there in Omaha. All right, let's talk about how the Democrats are responding to this. They're a bit panicked. Watch.
The governor there has thrown his support behind an effort that would no longer allocate the electoral votes by congressional district. Because right now, it's 5 votes there. Typically, Republicans get 4, and President Biden, Democrats get the 1 from Omaha.
That's right.
If that changes, and we don't know that it will, the state legislature is going to look at it. But if that changes, that takes away Biden's best path to win. Because if he wins Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, but loses the other swing states and no longer picks up the 1 in Nebraska, 269. That leads playbook this morning, the alarm among Democrats that this is possible. What do you think?
I think this is what the modern Republican Party has become. They're now changing the rules in the middle, trying to benefit themselves. This is the hell that Donald Trump hath wrought. In the middle of this, changing the rules 200 days before the election is ridiculous. I think you're right. I think there are real simulation problems. When you look at the map, that one electoral vote really matters in the combination of other things. Then you need another state. Yeah. And so the easiest pathway to victory has always been the Midwestern 3 states combined with Nebraska. Something tells me they're not going to get away with it this easy, and there will be a national outcry for trying to change the rules here.
I don't think so. All right, before I go to you, before I go to you, John, I'm going to go to Rick because, this is back. It's Trump's fault. You heard it's Trump's fault again.
Well, you talk about changing the rules at the last minute. Remember, these are the people that changed the election rules all over the country at the last minute in order to benefit Democrats and steal the election from Donald Trump. That's who those people are. I've been for this for a long time. This is actually one of our great friends, a Constitution coach and a great friend of Patriot Academy and Wall Builders for years. Senator Lauren Lippincott is the one that's carrying this. Now, it did fail yesterday, so it doesn't look great, but that's why the pressure needs to be on right now. The governor has said he will sign this if they can get it through this unicameral legislature there. So I think that's why it's important. Charlie was the first one to really talk about this nationally and kind of bring a lot of attention to it. So I really hope this happens. And just so people know, the Constitution gives the authority to each state legislature to decide how their electors are chosen. So this is absolutely within the purview of the legislature to do this. Only Nebraska and Maine do it this way, where they're not winner take all. And so it would be nice to see Nebraska go back to a winner-take-all. Frankly, if the whole country did it by legislative districts, Republicans would be the winners overall in that setup. But when it's specific only to Nebraska and Maine like this, it ends up hurting. So I really hope this happens. And last thing I'll say on this gives me great hope that they're even talking about this and that they're even this close to doing this. Because, I'm always talking about constitutional changes to restore the constitutional structure. And people say you can't do it. It's too big. It can't happen. Look at how close they are to actually making this happen, and the fact the governor's on board and Lauren's gotten this far with the legislation. I'm excited. This is a good, positive change to happen, and I'm praying they get it done. By the way, they've got another shot. They've got one more chance to get it through the legislature, and it's in the next couple of weeks. All
right. That's why Charlie called me yesterday asking for FlashPoint's help. So we're going to help get you guys there. You need to be there. All right. Before we move on, John, I wanted to give you a chance to respond. You were throwing your hands up in disbelief during that spot. Go ahead.
The reason I'm throwing my hands up in disbelief is because you got a liberal Democrat saying, well, you can't change the rules in the middle of the election year. That was the entire 2020 election. They changed it to where you could have drop boxes that nobody watched and looked at. You could have no excuse mail-in ballots. They just flooded a constitutional excuse, or let's match with all the other states except 2 of us. Let's get in line with that. And so he's, how dare the hell that Trump hath wrought is destroying this. It's like, no, they're getting back to a more constitutional and the way the rest of the country works. And you're griping about changing the rules. You don't gripe if it helps you. You just gripe if it helps you. It's the hypocrisy of the left is why I was throwing my hands up, Gene. It's insane. The things that they most accuse us of doing usually is what they're doing.
All right.
And John, hey, go ahead. Really important to know, the people they used to change the rules didn't have the authority to do so. They were using secretaries of state and people that didn't have the constitutional authority. This is the legislature of Nebraska given the constitutional authority to do this. That's the difference. They cheat with people that don't even have the authority to do it. We play by the rules, and we write the rules with the people that are supposed to write the rules.
All right, so there you go. Yeah.
Hey, there's good news all around. It's not just Nebraska, Gene. There's a breaking story that just happened today. No labels just pulled out. That was going to be a big, they were on all the swing state ballots just about, and they finally pulled out. That was going to be a game changer. I've been watching that all the way through. They couldn't get anybody on there. That is big,
all right,
big news.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Because right now, I have with me someone smarter than you, John, world-renowned neurosurgeon, former Secretary of Housing and Development, and founder of the American Cornerstone Institute. We're hearing he's on the short list as VP pick. Dr. Ben Carson, welcome back to FlashPoint, sir. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Always good to be with you.
It is. And remember, I'm holding you to your commitment to me you made last time about you're going to come on FlashPoint if that thing happens. So
if there's a flashpoint to report.
That's right. Well played. Well played. All right. So you've got a new book out, The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family, by Ben Carson and Candy. So explain to us, it's pretty significant. I think all of our audience would understand when you're saying there's a war on the American family. However, for those that may not really agree with that, explain how you're going to overcome our cultural war.
Well, first of all, the book will not be out until May the 14th, but it's available for pre-order wherever books are sold. What is the foundational cornerstone of any society? It's the families that compose it. And there's been a sustained attack on those families for a few decades now. You look at the way the sitcoms, for instance, portray fathers as goofballs, mothers as superheroes. Look at the effect that these kinds of things are having on the formation of families. We have far fewer traditional nuclear families being formed now, and that's where values are passed. They're passed through families. That's where kids get their identities. And when we don't have those traditional families, they look for other places to get those identities. They become very easy to manipulate. And you look at some of the Marxist ideologies. What did Vladimir Lenin say? He said, "Give me your children to teach for 4 years, and the seed that I sow will never be uprooted." These are the kinds of things that are undermining the authority of parents and families. There was a story recently about a child that was taken away from a family because they wouldn't use the pronouns that the kid wanted. There was no abuse. There was nothing of that nature, but just because of that, saying that the state has more authority than the actual parents do. And this has been a goal for a long time. If you look at the 45 Goals of Communism that's read into the congressional record, January the 10th, 1963, talking about driving wedges between parents and their children and undermining the authority of parents. This is part of fundamentally changing our nation. And if we don't know about it, if the people don't know what's going on, they become easier to manipulate.
Well, that's the truth for sure. Why this book wasn't just written with you, but also with Candy? Tell us about the decision to do this.
Well, my last several books I've written with my wife. She's a very intelligent person, a graduate of Yale University and Johns Hopkins University with a master's degree, and has been right by my side for these last 49 years. And we talk about these things all the time, get each other's ideas. So there was no reason for me to just do it by myself in that situation.
I agree. Great decision there. All right, let me show you this that was recently posted. The Massachusetts General Brigham Hospital System will no longer report babies who are born with drugs in their system because of the state welfare agencies, unless there are concerns the baby's abused or neglected. They're saying because it would be racist. Reporting child neglect is now racist because it disproportionately affects black families. How did we get so far down this path?
Well, we found that victimhood was something to be desired. It's absolutely craziness. I was in Europe last fall, and I was just talking to a bunch of the Europeans about their opinion of America. And the most common opinion I got, they'd say, "You guys have lost your minds." And this is from Europe. They've gone pretty far left themselves, but they think we've just gone over the limit here. And, these kinds of things, saying that, minorities can't get, an official ID so they can vote. All these kinds of things that indicate that there's something wrong with minorities. This is just foolishness. And I hope it's being rejected out of hand. And you can see that, the Hispanic community, the African-American community are starting to shift in terms of their voter preferences. I think fewer and fewer people are allowing themselves to be bamboozled.
Let me change subject just a little bit, get your opinion here to weigh in on this. Thomas Massey reports, we've seen this before, the U.S. collaborates with China to make bird flu more contagious and transmissible to mammals. Bird flu now discovered in U.S. dairy cattle, transmitted to at least one human being. Bird flu confirmed in Texas worker who had contact with dairy cows. Are we heading down this path again, Doc, or what's going on here?
Well, I don't think the American people will allow us to go down that path again. I think seeing the incredible damage that was done by the misinformation that was disseminated by our government agencies will not be forgotten anytime soon. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't pay attention to this story. Obviously, appropriate investigations need to be done, but using it to manipulate the population is going to be very difficult. And I'm glad that we've learned some things from the last time it happened.
Yeah, amen. Agree with you on that one. All right, so we all know that on Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, Joe Biden proclaimed it as the Trans Day of Visibility. Let me show you what President Trump had to say about that. Watch.
And what the hell was Biden thinking when he declared Easter Sunday to be Trans Visibility Day? Such total disrespect to Christians, and November 5th is going to be called something else. You know, it's going to be called Christian Visibility Day, when Christians turn out in numbers that nobody has ever seen before.
Okay, Doc, when you see that, you know, what strikes me about that, of course, we agree, you know, he's speaking our language. We agree with that. But it's almost shocking now. We've been so desensitized. Christians have been so assaulted, censored, banned, canceled, whatever. You know, and now when we see somebody say we're going to stand up for Christianity, it's almost shocking. That becomes the shocking part. Do you think this is, we're going to see this continue? Obviously, President Trump doesn't say that he'll do that when he's in office, but I want to get your opinion. How do we see this change?
Well, if we continue with leftist governments that have Marxist tendencies, of course it will continue, because they don't want anything to do with God. They want to dismiss God and replace God with government. And so it is not surprising to see this kind of activity going on. And that's why the American people have to recognize that our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, says that our rights come from our Creator, also known as God, and not from the government. They can't be taken away from us by the government. We need to understand that. Must fight for it.
That's right. Speaking of perilous fights, the book comes out soon. You can pre-order right there. Overcoming Our Culture's War on American Family by Dr. Ben and his wife, Candy Carson. You can go pre-order wherever books are sold. Thank you, sir, for coming by. We look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, gentlemen, as we continue to wrap up this program, you see what Dr. Carson was talking about, John, and I want you to kind of quickly go back to that, the topic you were getting for. I had to interrupt you. But there is good news out there. It's just that we have to look harder and harder for it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, or you have to have eyes to see. You can interrupt me anytime you want to, by the way, for Dr. Carson. I have immense respect for him. I think he is a gift to this nation. He's speaking the truth about the family. But there's good news everywhere. The no labels thing just broke. That was going to be, they're already on Nevada, North Carolina, Arizona, a lot of the swing states. That was going to take 30% maybe away from Trump or Biden, and it could have thrown the election back to Biden. Who knows? That's now off. Wisconsin 2 days ago. became the 27th state since 2020 to outlaw Zuck bucks, private fundings where Mark Zuckerberg put them into Democrat states to gin out far left votes, and that was a huge part of the election. So there is good news all over the place. Right. I don't even know if we have to look hard. We just have to open our eyes and see.
That's true. All right, Rick, let me show you this. This is more good news that we found. I don't know if you've seen this. UT Austin just defunded all their DEI programs and fired 60 DEI employees. This is the way. What do you think?
This is the way. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, listen, I'm a UT grad. I try not to tell people that. I just admitted it on national television. What am I thinking? But that's where I went to law school, and it is a left-wing bastion, Gene. I remember even in my, my First and Second Amendment classes in the law school there, I was like one against the whole. Actually, there was one other guy in my entire class that actually thought the Second Amendment was an individual right, not a group right, that actually believed in freedom of religion and all of these things. So it's an extremely liberal school. So for them to do this, right. Huge deal, and just more progress. Just like John said, there's a lot of positive things to look at. I would just throw back to what Dr. Carson was saying. Listen, the family unit is the most important battle. That's the most important place. We need to get educated. We need to be under God for our nation to be under God. We need to raise our kids to believe in that and then branch out from there.
Amen. All right, gentlemen, thank you guys. Of course, John Graves, Rick Green, Representative Bob Good, and, of course, Dr. Ben Carson. Thank you for joining us for this early edition of FlashPoint. Remember, you can always catch us on the website at Rumble or at govictory.com. We're going to join now the Branson Victory Campaign. If you haven't seen this yet, if you haven't seen one of the campaigns, the live events with Kenneth Copeland, you want to stay tuned right here on the Victory Channel for the latest with that. Until next time, remember, we're always, right of center. See you next time.